In early 2018, Apple partially finished construction on their new massive office building, called Apple Campus 2, also known as Apple Park and the Spaceship. It was a project started by Apple founder Steve Jobs back in 2006. Jobs presented his plan for Apple Park to Cupertino City Council in 2011, months before he passed away.
As Hewlett-Packard has been shrinking lately, they decided to sell that property and we bought it. And we've come up with a design that puts 12,000 people in one building.
Cupertino approved it in October 2013 and construction started in late 2013. The land cost an estimated $160 million in 2011. The original planned budget for Apple Campus was about $3 billion. However, in 2013, the total cost was estimated to be closer to $5 billion. Now I know $5 billion for a building sounds like a fortune. Then again, Apple can afford it. A final spend of $5 billion is a huge outlay, but would still represent less than 2% of Apple's cash reserves, which was estimated at $285 billion in early 2018. And the company is currently valued at nearly $900 billion as of February 2018, and is on target to be valued at $1 trillion in 2019. Oh, and in case you're wondering, no other company in the world has as much money as Apple does. Apple Park is home to several buildings, most prominently a 2.8 million square foot ring, unofficially known as the Spaceship, which boasts circular walls 4 stories high, constructed from the largest panes of curved glass in the world, and one of the largest roof-mounted solar farms in the world. Here are some of the key features of the campus. The circular 4-story building will have 2.8 million square feet of office space, with enough room for 12,000 employees. The campus is one of the most energy efficient buildings in the world and is powered by 100% renewable energy from 17 megawatts of rooftop solar panels. The campus sits on 175 acres of land, with separate on-site R&D facilities and 300 square feet of research space. The building is surrounded by 9,000 drought-resistant trees and will include olive, apricot, cherry, and yes, apple trees. There will be jogging and cycling trails, with more than 1,000 bikes kept on site at all times, which staff can use to make their way around. The building is clad entirely in the world's largest panels of curved glass, and has about 3,000 glass panels throughout the whole building. The Spaceship has 360 degrees curved glass fronted walls and central courtyard, overlooking a landscape park area on the inside ring. There is underground parking hidden from view, meaning 80% of the site can be covered in trees. The building stays eco-friendly with natural ventilation that works instead of air conditioning for 70% of the year, and has low energy LED lighting where natural light doesn't reach. There's an orchard, meadow and pond within the ring's interior grounds, and the parkland has 3.2 kilometers of walking and running paths for Apple staff. The building also features a 2-story yoga room, a 100,000 square foot fitness centre, an underground 1,000 seat auditorium, a 4,000 person cafe with 4-story glass doors, and Apple even created and patented a pizza box that lets air and moisture escape so crusts won't get soggy, for workers who want to take their cafe pizza back to their desks. The company's new 175-acre campus is 1 mile in circumference, with a diameter of 461 metres, and can house 12,000 employees. The main building was ready for employees to begin partial occupancy in January 2018. As the building was still not finished. The process of moving more than 12,000 people was estimated to take over 6 months. Since employees have been able to move in and start working in the building, a couple of big design issues have popped up, such as one of the features of the building was about 3,000 panels of floor-to-ceiling glass. All that glass may let in a lot of light and save on energy, but it appears Apple employees have been injuring themselves after walking into glass walls and doors. It has been reported that 3 Apple employees dialed 911 after walking into glass panels and injuring themselves. Another issue is, with so many employees working in one building, Apple opted to move away from individual offices to an open plan floor design. This open plan layout is used in much of the building, with most employees situated around large tables instead of separated into individual offices or cubicles. This layout is intended to promote collaboration, but it hasn't gone down well with everyone. Apple employees are unhappy and reluctant to accept the working conditions on the campus. It has apparently angered some of the company's engineers and developers, who are used to private offices or cubicles. Open plan offices have become more common since the 1990s, but have come under scrutiny in recent years. A recent report stated that open plan offices are sabotaging employees' abilities to focus at work, with office workers losing 28% of their productive time due to interruptions and distractions. The biggest problem with companies changing anything are the workers. People in general hate change and are reluctant to change. But I guess if you want to work for one of the biggest companies in the world, they best learn fast that change is a part of life, and you have to accept it. Now, before I end this video, I would like to give a special thanks to Sasha from OxySasha YouTube channel, who filmed drone footage of the Apple campus on 3 separate occasions, specifically for me and this video. Thanks a lot, Sasha. I really appreciate it. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Hello and welcome to Property News Update. Well, we didn't have a show last week because of Easter, so I hope you had a lovely time with the family. Here are the stories that Nicola, McDougall and I will be covering today. They are making more land, believe it or not, and the Millennial Bank for mum and dad, a bit of a twist on an old story. The 8-year flood cycle, what does that mean? A mistake? Or is it a marketing masterstroke? And what about Jenny Craig? She's shedding dollars, not pounds. Back in just a moment.
Did you know you can save up to 70% on your staff costs by outsourcing the low-value, repeatable tasks so your team can focus on growing your business? Beepo is an outsourcing provider focused on the real estate industry. With an English-speaking, tertiary qualified and fully trained team in the Philippines, Beepo will give your business the boost it needs to start growing and returning value to you. For more information, visit beepo.com.au.
And joining me once again, Nicola McDougall from Bricks and Mortar Media. Hello, Nicola.
Hello, Kevin. Good to see you, my friend.
Yes, did you have a nice Easter?
I did. We had a nice time up on the coast, had some friends visiting and got in the water and had a lovely time. Had some chocolate, had some hot cross buns.
Did you? Put on a bit of weight, did you? By any chance? Did you put on a bit of weight?
Well, no, because we went surfing quite a bit. So, you know, you can pretty much eat anything when you do that.
Yeah, you got to balance it up, haven't you?
You do.
Okay, well, let's go to our first story. And this is all about making more land. Well, they're not really making more land. They're actually building apartments quite ingeniously over railway lines, which I've always thought is a fairly logical thing to do, Nicola.
Exactly. This story about London, and obviously, Kevin, you've been to London too. I lived there for a couple of years in my 20s. I was a bit surprised by this one because I kind of thought that they were already doing this, given that London has always been a huge city, and that tube, what a wonderful way to get around. When I lived there, I don't think I drove a car for 2 years. Kind of had to relearn how to do it again when I got back to Australia. But talking about, clearly there is no land left in London, and so they're having to build up. And I guess the story is really about transit-oriented developments, isn't it? And about utilising those spaces more. But I think actually, because clearly the underground, there's already, apartments and things on top of that. But this is actually about being above train lines, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, they're talking about 300,000 homes, so it's fairly significant. Yeah. It's nothing new. There's a lot of it already in Australia, in fact, in Sydney and in Brisbane and I think our capital cities. In a lot of cases, they've built hotels and accommodation places over major railway stations, not necessarily over open lines. But when you think about it, it's a logical thing to do because to get a railway line through, it's fairly clear. All the trees have gone. and it would have to make construction a bit easier. You'd have to do a fair bit of soundproofing, I would think.
I think that's the point, isn't it? That perhaps 20, 30, 40 years ago, this wasn't really an option because of construction issues and that soundproofing. I certainly wouldn't like to. I don't think you sort of get lulled to sleep by the sound of trains going past every going underneath you every couple of minutes. But certainly a wonderful idea to obviously create more housing, more affordable housing as well, and reducing the number of cars on roads and things like that, where you can literally live above a train station, catch the train to where you work and things like that, and not have to worry about owning a car.
It's different when you're on a train, clickety-clack, and go to sleep that way. Although, having been on a train a few times, trying to go to sleep, it's not all that easy, especially when they pull up in stations all the time, and then lights come on and people looking through the window. But yeah, anyway, there is a certain romantic feel about living above a railway station, I must say. Anyway, there you go. That's story number one. Hey, I just want to remind you before we go to our next story that Real Estate Talk show number 355 will be out tomorrow. We're going to have a look at a Labor policy and how it's benefiting only 3% of the population. We'll dig into that story. Also, living in a rental while you're renovating, it might make a lot of sense, you think, but it's not such a good idea. We hear about that. Millennials' influence on this election. This is going to be a big thing, Nicola, I think, just how much power millennials are going to have. And I'm talking to a millennial about, what they want and how they're going to influence this election. So that's an interesting story. Also, not all downsizers are the same. And what's behind the softening New Zealand market? We're hearing a few stories coming out of New Zealand, particularly out of Auckland, about what's happening there. Okay, so that's coming out tomorrow. That's Real Estate Talk show number 355. Watch out for that. Okay, we'll take you to our next story. This one comes from ABC News, the Millennial Bank for Mum and Dads. We've talked about how mum and dads have had to help the kids get into property. Well, it's now turned right around because now the kids are helping out mum and dad.
Yeah, this story is an interesting one for the time that we're living in, I guess, and starting to see a lot of those baby boomers heading into retirement age with not a lot of superannuation savings, and certainly for those who have divorced at some point. And clearly this story is mainly about women who have, got to the twilight years of their life, or perhaps in their last years of their working lives, and have very little superannuation, very little savings behind them, and often staring down the barrel of having to rely on the pension without actually having a home that's theirs that they've paid off. And clearly that's not really an option. And what we're seeing is millennial children, even Gen X children. I have someone in my own circle who is helping their mother in the same situation, who, there is a big generational change from baby boomers to Generation X and Gen Y and millennials. And, someone of my age has been working my whole life. My friends, my female friends that have children have also took a little bit of time off when they had children, but continued on with their careers. So that disparity between their superannuation savings and our mother's generation is not going to be as great. But what we're seeing now is, I guess, just that, that women did used to stay at home and look after the children. That's right. And because of that, they've got to the end of their working lives. And the fact that superannuation hasn't been around for their whole working lives, and they're at the situation now where they don't have a lot of money, and their children of all generations, whether Gen X, Gen Y or millennials, are helping them out, which is the way that it is in many cultures. And the story does talk about this in quite some detail. Certainly in Asian cultures, South American cultures, very common for this to happen, where the children are helping out their parents financially in their later years in life. And perhaps this is something that will become more common in our society as well.
Indeed. Well said. Okay, we'll take you to story number 3. This one comes from Mansion Global. This is about an 8-year flood cycle. I remember in Brisbane, let's have a look at the Brisbane market, when it suffered those terrible floods, always around the river. And that's where we see a lot of that prestige property, those luxury homes were the first to be inundated. And here we are 8 years down the track, and this story is talking about how those areas have recovered after the flood. So that we tend to forget after 8 years, don't we? And our confidence comes back, Nicola.
Exactly, and I was actually working at the REOQ during the 2011 floods, and we, on behalf of the Institute and its members, did a lot of media about some of the scaremongering that was out there about, how, the whole Brisbane market and certainly the prestige into the market, which generally is on the river, was the end of the good times for those properties. And the CEO at the time, Dan Malloy, managed to get a lot of airtime and sort of, let people be a bit more reasonable about what the potential impact would be, which was it was always going to be temporary. And the reason for that is that these are the top end properties. They're very unique and there will always be demand for them. Clearly, the floods, have impacted the way that some properties need to be built and all those types of things. But, people's memories fade pretty quickly. And at the end of the day, the chance of having we had another big flood clearly in 1974, then in 2011, perhaps in, my lifetime, there may be another one, but perhaps there won't be.
Perhaps there won't be.
It's about hedging your bets on, do I want, if I could afford it, that beautiful riverfront views, those prestige locations, or do I want to live in fear of something that probably won't happen again anytime soon?
Yeah, well, real estate agents, according to the story in Mansion Global, out of the Brisbane market, in fact, are saying that they're receiving multiple offers on prestige waterfront homes priced between 4 million Australian and 10 million, but it's not causing any spike in prices, just a steady growth. So, and that's a good sign as well. So, good sign for the prestige market, not only in Brisbane, but or probably all around Australia, wherever it's been impacted. We're going to take a break in just a moment, but before we do, I just want to feature this in our series of why women live longer than men. I thought you'd like this one, Nicola. Nicola had to actually say to me before we started in the show today, what's this guy doing? Well, let me show you. He's actually drilling something. It looks to me to be a piece of plastic. But look what he's drilling it on his leg. I mean, it's going to go straight through his leg.
I know. I don't know what he thinks he's doing, that he's, his skills are so precise that he can somehow stop the drill bit before it goes into the fleshy part of your leg there. Or maybe I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's into some type of odd body piercing and is using it as an opportunity to, create a hole that he can put some type of ring in or something like that.
Oh,
but yeah,
come on. I think that's stretching it a bit far.
Well, what is really? It beggars belief, and I can't believe that. I looked at it, and that's why I had to ask you. I said, "What the hell is he doing?"
Yeah, well, there you go. Okay, going to take a quick break. Back in just a moment, and we'll be talking about a video that went viral, and it's either a huge mistake or it could, in fact, be a marketing masterstroke. Tell you about that in just a moment. Welcome back to the show, and we'll take you to story number 4, and this comes from The Real Deal. A marketing mistake, or is it a marketing masterstroke? This is the story of a video that went viral. Now, we could have shared this story with you from a huge number of sites, probably even 100, because it did go viral, and everyone seemed to pick it up. The story here is that it was a marketing video shot in Australia. I'd like to get your take on this, because I've got a very strong view about this one, Nicola. Have you watched the video, by the way? We're not going to show the video now because it's available in the story, so just go to the story and have a look at it there.
Well, do you want to go first, Kevin?
Yeah, well, I didn't see any problem with this at all, to be quite frank. I think anyone who gets on their high horse and says that this is bad is crazy, because, hey, Nicola, you can see this in a lot of their dance moves. It just so happens that they've done it in a house, and people have thought that it looks very suggestive. But I can tell you, I've seen all of those moves on stage.
I must admit, when I watched the video and you do see the young man walking towards the front door, as someone who used to do Latin dancing, automatically I thought, oh, he's a Latin dancer because of the way he was walking. Yeah. And I agree with you to the extent that they probably should have focused more on some dance moves. They could have done some cool rumba or some zouk lambada or something like that, and that would make it obvious, because they were clearly both dancers. You could tell that. But I guess it kind of, from my point of view, erred on the sexy time, sex sells type of thing, which was a mistake, if you ask me.
They could have done without that scene in the kitchen where she lays across the bench. I mean, they could have done without that. But, by and large. Now, this is why I think it could have been a masterstroke. And someone told me this the other day, because the agency, LJ Hooker, I think in Bankstown in Sydney, they instantly took it down and apologised. And I thought, well, maybe they were too quick. But maybe they weren't. You know why? Because that's when it went viral. I think that was the intention all along. So if that was the case, congratulations, because it worked.
Indeed. I mean, not all publicity is good publicity, contrary to the old turn of phrase, I suppose. But I certainly hope that was the reason why, and they weren't still kind of living in last century where they thought that sex sells. And, times have moved on, certainly in the last couple of years. And I feel that, okay, if they wanted to do it for viral reasons, high fives to you, it worked. However, if they just kind of stuffed up, it would have been so much better if they just incorporated the Latin stuff in there. It would have been amazing to watch. And you could see that they were clearly both good dancers, and perhaps the storyboard of what they were supposed to do got a little bit lost in the dance moves or the lack of dance moves. But anyway, we're talking about it, so I guess that marketing worked, right? Yeah,
well, I debated whether we should even do that, but I think it was one of those stories that you couldn't not do because it was such a big thing. Hey, I want to take you to our last story. I've included this, not suggesting we're going to talk about this for a long time, but
good.
I love the headline. Jenny Craig sheds dollars and not pounds. She's trimmed another $7 million off the listing price of her property. I think we might be able to pull a Google map up here. It's a massive home right on the beach. But it was probably never worth whatever she was asking. It was now asking 27.9
million. I think the original listing price.
It was listed at 28 million, and she trimmed 7 million off that.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, so obviously, and whereabouts is it? It's in the States, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in California, I think.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
California. Yeah.
I mean, perhaps an example of that sort of top end of town there in America, and we have done a few stories about this over time. Bruce Willis, remember the story we did about Bruce Willis and some various other celebrities who have had to drop their asking prices because, I mean, clearly they have a lot of multimillionaires there, but still a very small proportion of the population could afford to buy one of these properties. I was surprised that clearly the weight loss industry, very lucrative, that she could afford to have bought this. And Jenny Craig, probably one of the first ones out there many decades ago. I think my mum flirted with it in the 1980s, who, just set up a company that was addressing, people's desire to lose weight. And it has remained probably, in the top echelon of those types of companies for decades. So hats off to her. Yeah,
I just had a quick look at it. It's in Del Mar, San Diego, which is probably one of my favourite places in the States. I mean, New York's lovely, but San Diego reminds me so much of the tropical areas of Queensland, where I spend a lot of time. So, yes, it's romantic. Anyway, enough on that story.
Cheaper to go to far north Queensland, though.
What's that?
Cheaper to go to far north Queensland on holiday, though.
It is. Yes, I can attest to that. Hey, I want to finish the show up by bringing you this graphic. It's a building stuff up. We feature one of these every week. Have a look at this. I don't know what came first, whether it was the bench and the toilet underneath or the toilet and the bench one on top. But why would you do this? I mean, you'd have
Where do you find these, Kevin?
Where do I find them? They're all over the internet. I've got to tell you, there's a ton of them.
It's a classic chicken or egg or bench or toilet.
Yeah, I know.
Which came first?
How would it be? How hard would it be to sell that property?
Well, obviously, very difficult.
It would be.
But I just.
What fascinates me? The toilet lid is up.
So someone uses it.
Yes.
Maybe it's a training.
You'd have to lean forward, wouldn't you?
Maybe it's a little toilet for little toddlers.
Yeah, well, let's just leave it at that, hey? We'll just smooth over that one.
Yeah,
Hey, Nicola.
I feel that the toilet was there. They have put the bench
Yeah, I
on
think you're
top
right.
and just thought, well, we're just going to leave the loo there and
I
no
think
one will
so.
notice, which
Yeah.
clearly is a big fail.
They should have put a cupboard in front of it, a door or something.
Well, just
Just to hide
remove
it.
it. It's very easy to remove a toilet.
Yes, I know. Okay. Hey, Nicola, practical Nicola, thank you so much for your time. Been great talking to you, and we'll catch up with you again in the next show.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you as always.
Enjoy your weekend, my dear.
Indeed, you too.
Okay. And don't forget, another reminder for you, Real Estate Talk will be out tomorrow, so watch out for that. And I'll see you, I think it's Kieran Clare next week in the show. We'll be back then with more property news update. See you then. Bye.
Billed as the fastest way to cross the surface of the Earth, Hyperloop represents the greatest leap in transport infrastructure for generations. With passengers sitting in pods that travel at airline speed through pressurized tubes, using electric propulsion and magnetic levitation, the concept promises to slash journey times between major cities from several hours to a matter of minutes. Whilst it may feel like science fiction, Hyperloop is now on the cusp of becoming a reality. This is the story behind the concept that's about to revolutionize our world. Hyperloop was first conceived in 2012 by Tesla and SpaceX founder Elon Musk. In a white paper released the following year, Musk set out his vision for a futuristic, super high-speed transportation system that would see passenger pods move through a partial vacuum in steel tubes, addressing the two key factors that slow down conventional vehicles: friction and air resistance. Exploring a potential route between Los Angeles and San Francisco, Musk believed that his concept could slash the 8-hour bus ride, 4-hour train journey, and convoluted 3-hour air travel experience between the two cities to just 30 minutes. Under Musk's first Hyperloop proposal, he suggested that compression fans would move air around the passenger pods to minimise drag and create air bearings beneath them, floating them off the surface of the tubes. It should be noted that Musk's early Hyperloop concept is not a million miles away from Isambard Kingdom Brunel's atmospheric railway that ran between Exeter and Plymouth in the UK from 1847 to 1848. That system moved carriages with pressurised air. The air was extracted from a pipe that ran between the rails by pumping stations situated roughly every 3 miles along the route, creating a vacuum. A piston contained within this pipe was connected to the train, which pulled it forward. Despite its initial success, the leather flaps that made the vacuum pipes airtight soon began to fail, causing air to leak from the system, and Brunel's railway was abandoned. With an estimated price tag close to $6 billion, Musk's first Hyperloop concept never came to fruition. But the impressive idea and potential to link cities in such a direct way sparked intense interest. From inception, Musk had always stated that the concept of Hyperloop would be open source, and he actively encouraged others to come together and develop the necessary technology independently from his involvement. This led to the formation of several startups and student teams developing various aspects of Hyperloop technology with varying degrees of success. Now, several fully fledged companies are making significant strides to bring Hyperloop systems into reality. Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, or HTT, are making aggressive advancements and recently constructed a full-scale test track in France. But the clear leaders of the pack in the current standings are Virgin Hyperloop One. Virgin Hyperloop One are on track to achieve their bold ambition of bringing a Hyperloop system into operation by 2021. Originally formed in 2014 as Hyperloop One, The company was rebranded following a significant investment from Sir Richard Branson in 2017. Deviating slightly from Musk's original plan, Virgin Hyperloop One's technology combines two basic principles. The first is magnetic levitation, or maglev, a technology already used in monorails to lift the passenger pods and move them along their rails. Magnetic levitation uses two sets of magnets, one to repel the train from the track and lift it upwards, and the other to move the floating train along the track at considerable speed with reduced friction. The second principle is the use of a low-pressure, vacuum-sealed environment for the passenger pods to travel through. By removing most of the air from the tubes and having no contact with the ground, the pods face little to no resistance as they move. Air pressures inside the tube are equivalent to flying 200,000 feet above sea level. Such an environment enables the pods to reach speeds of over 760 miles per hour using very little energy. By virtue of being in a tube, the system is protected from the weather and can operate in almost any climatic conditions. Virgin Hyperloop One's system is controlled by advanced software that ensures acceleration and deceleration occur gradually, going relatively unnoticed by those travelling inside. Having built a 500-metre track in the Nevada desert, Virgin Hyperloop One have carried out several tests, focusing on individual aspects of the system, and a complete full-scale systems test in May 2017. The propulsion, braking, levitation and vacuum systems are all performing well, and the team have achieved a top speed of over 240 miles per hour to date. To inform their plans for developing a fully operational network that is affordable for all, Virgin Hyperloop One launched a global challenge to find the routes best placed to benefit from Hyperloop technology. With over 2,600 entries, the field was reduced to just 35 potential locations, with each entry enjoying strong support from governments and urban planners. With 10 winners across 5 countries, Virgin Hyperloop One are now working in partnership with each of the locations on how best to deliver the Hyperloop technologies in live networks. In February 2018, the firm unveiled their first prototype passenger pods for the Dubai to Abu Dhabi route, a network that would drastically slash the car travel time between the two cities from 2 hours to just 12 minutes. The advantages of Hyperloop are considerable. Like train stations, Hyperloop stations called portals are planned to be located within inner city areas with easy links to existing transport infrastructure. This gives Hyperloop systems a distinct advantage over air travel, where airports tend to be located beyond city limits with fewer accessibility options. Additionally, the system is being developed to function on a turn-up-and-go principle, without a lengthy check-in process, and with accelerated, advanced security checks. Another clear benefit is its speed. If Hyperloop could significantly reduce the travel time between cities, it could be possible to live in a completely different city or a part of the country from where you work, with a commute no dissimilar in length to the one you perhaps take today. This opens up a wide range of housing and employment opportunities, with people no longer having to live close to where they work. It could also take pressure off our cities, where infrastructure is often still catching up with development, and where house prices have become unattainable for most. With speeds rivaling aircraft, and 9 of the top 10 busiest air routes in the world being domestic, Hyperloop has the potential to completely revolutionise the way we live, work and travel. A Hyperloop system requires very little energy to propel pods through its tubes, as the vacuum environment poses little resistance. As such, the systems could be powered by renewable technologies such as solar and wind, offering a considerably cleaner alternative to air travel. When you consider the prospect of people being propelled in tubes across the Earth's surface at near supersonic speeds, there are a number of questions that instinctively jump to mind. Perhaps the first is the impact of a potential break or breach in one of the tubes, possibly as the result of an earthquake or external impact. Virgin Hyperloop One explained that they have addressed this by constructing thick steel tubes that are extremely difficult to puncture or break. Additionally, the tubes are engineered to withstand changes in pressure and air leaks while maintaining their structural integrity. Theoretically, a sudden influx of air into one of the tubes would simply slow the pods down due to the increased air resistance. The pods could then be directed to the next portal via an auxiliary power boost. There is also the ability to section off parts of the route and to repressurize sections where significant emergencies occur, and all pods are expected to be fitted with emergency exits. Externally, Hyperloop systems will largely travel on elevated, seismically designed pylons that are able to move and flex independently of one another, minimizing damage in the event of a major ground shift. Sensors along the route would instantly report issues to the system's control center. In answering the natural safety concerns raised, Virgin Hyperloop One also point out that millions of people already travel at high speeds in metal tubes every time they take a flight, and that numerous concerns surrounded the use of jet aircraft when that mode of transportation first came to prevalence. While the idea of Hyperloop may seem far-fetched, when you consider the industrial progress made in the past 200 years, the current rate of technology adoption in our societies, and the significant advances being made by Hyperloop companies around the world, this incredible new transportation system looks set to become part of our everyday lives in the very near future. If you enjoyed this video and would like to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, subscribe to the B1M.